Another great speaker, Dr. Ragini Agarwal. Can I have her PPT, please? The CV PPT. Dr. Vani, do we have it?
First, I will like to share if it is unstable.
Dr. Ragini's PPT. Yeah. So we have another very brilliant person on board today. And it is my pleasure to introduce her to all of you. Dr. Ragini Agarwal, the Vice President, FOGSI 2020. A great webinar we have already attended by her on adolescent health and related issues last weekend. And it was a magical figure of maybe more than 10,000 people attending that webinar. So she is a founder of many organizations, a founder of Gurgaon Obs Gynae, founder of associations of gynecologists of Haryana, Harob Gyn, a chairperson FOGSI Foods and Drug Committee in 2009 to 12, a project director of GOGS Rural Adolescent Health, project director Pratiksha, a president of Indian Academy of Cosmetic Dermatology, founder secretary Indian Menopause, ISOPAB, HAGE, that is Haryana Association of Gynec Endoscopy, and president, executive member of so many organizations. So a great leader and a superb human being and a brilliant thought process that she carries with her. Dr. Ragini ma'am, please.
Thank you, Jyoti, for your words, kind words, magical words. Always they are like this. Starting the presentation, I'll just say the support connection is little unstable. If you are not able to listen me properly, please tell me and you share my presentation. So I will thank Dr. Sharda ma'am to be here. She is an inspiration to all of us and her words are so true. And secondly, the Neeraj, I'm proud of you. Being the VP in charge of this committee is doing wonderful work, which is really a dream. When I was taken over, I told Dr. Alpesh, please give me this committee because this particular subject is absolutely neglected. We are not taught anything in our undergrad and postgrad, and today it is a need of our when every woman should understand and not from the people who are not educated, as the brilliant lecture by Dr. Sushil Jindal, Dr. Jindal, he has told that Shafa Khanas, but by the educated person. And especially it is very important after this infertility, because it is one of the reasons for the infertility to understand this function very clearly. And I congratulate Dr. Sunil Jindal. That is such a wonderful speaker. I think I'm listening him first time or second time, but I'm mesmerized. So my topic, evaluation of female sexual dysfunction, is a topic which is a very difficult in a way because female, they never talk about their sexual dysfunction. They don't ready to talk about their word sex because it is a taboo. It is not considered good. Woman, if she talk about sex, her desire, she is taken as not a good woman. Sex is a normal physiological process which is required like any day-to-day physiological process.
मेरा तो disaster ही हो गया.
And it is important, a quality of life dependent on it. A person who is not happy in a married life is going to affect her every field of work. So it is very important to discuss it. So I'm just giving you two cases which comes in daily in our OPD. Mr. and Mrs. Singh, 5 years, married for 6 years. It's a love marriage. They have a 4 years of the courtship. They came for a consultation of infertility. On discussion, it came out they never had a penetrative sex. On examination, patient has a severe vaginismus, and on examination under anesthesia, there was no structural problem was found, and she was sent to a psychologist for deeper assessment. She was raped by her uncle at the age of 13. And after many sessions, although she was improved little bit, but they wanted a baby and they are resorted for an ART. Second case, this marriage is not also a happy marriage, but
"34 years from Iraq, consulted for," please इसको full कर दीजिए.
Is it okay, ma'am?
So she came for a severe dyspareunia and not able to have full penetration. On examination, I was unable to insert finger in vagina. There was a block and she has in such a severe pain. She just pushed me by the leg. On full assessment, she is having OH-Vera syndrome, which was normal after surgical treatment. So with these two cases, which are having a lots of havoc in their life, I will start with the presentation with the evaluation of the female sexual health, which is a dynamic and the multifaceted phenomena that is closely linked to a woman's overall next slide please, overall quality of life. Sexual dysfunctions can interfere intimacy, affect a marital relationship, erode well-being and overall health. Next slide, please. So before going to the abnormality, in short, what is a normal female sexual response cycle? It has 4 stages: arousal, then marked by the physiological and psychological changes. So first is excitement, second is plateau, third is orgasm, and fourth onset of sexual treatment. There are sexual changes as well as vasoconstriction. Next slide, please. Vaginal lubrication and overall body changes. Then there's a stage of plateau, which is the second stage in which the vasocongestion reaches its maximum. Vaginal swelling, heart rate, and muscle tension may increase. The third stage is orgasm, which involves synchronized vaginal, anal, and abdominal muscle contractions, and the loss of involuntary muscle control and intense pleasure. Here, the role of clitoral stimulation comes for achieving the orgasm. The final phase resolution involves a rush of blood away from the vagina, shrinking breast and nipple, and the reduction in the heart rate, respiration, and blood pressure. Next slide, please. So what happened? In cycle of next slide, please. In the cycle of sexual dysfunction, example shown here is example of a patient which can center the sexual dysfunction is one area, proceed to another area, so the patient presenting complaint may not represent the problem. So the physiology of the female sexual response is not only the external or internal pelvic organ, but it is something beyond that. There's the involvement of the spinal and the central nervous system. There are lots of the chemical like serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine. They are all come in the process, and the role of the estradiol, sex steroid, testosterone are essential in the female genital response and the normative functioning. Next slide, please. So coming to the female sexual dysfunction. Next slide, please, Dr. Sonal. Hello?
Yeah, ma'am.
Next slide, please, Dr. Sonal.
Yes, ma'am.
The female sexual dysfunction is a general term comprising several sexual health concerns that can be distressing for patients, including female sexual interest or arousal disorder, female orgasmic disorder, or genitopelvic pain penetration disorder. And these sexual health concerns are not considered dysfunction unless they cause a distress. Next slide. So to qualify as a dysfunction, must be present more than 75% of the time, more than 6 months, causing significant distress, and must not be explained by a non-sexual mental disorder, relationship distress, substance abuse, or a medical condition. Next slide, please. So there are biological factors or the psychological factors which play a role in the female sexual dysfunction. As Dr. Sunil has aptly said in the males that chronic illnesses play a great role in the sexual dysfunction, it is very true for the females also. If she's having a cardiovascular disease, diabetes, autoimmune disorders, neurologic impairment, any malignancy, specifically any urological problem, gynecological problems, endocrinopathy, it all affects her sexual behavior. And coming to the psychological factors, there's interpersonal conflicts plays a very big role. Or other factors like marital discord, poor partner health, cultural conflict, lack of privacy, poor relationship trust, and poor technical skills in the partner also play a role. There are a very important factor in our females when we talk about the biological factor. That is, we female are made of the estrogen. And whenever there's an estrogen of the depleted, it causes a changes in the behavior and it affects the vagina, leading to the vaginal dryness. What a woman experiences when she becomes menopause, or it is a surgical menopause or a premature ovarian failure, or because of cancer, she has a menopausal changes. And not only this, hyperestrogenic condition can be there in girls who are eating disorders, or there's a postpartum woman, lactation-induced amenorrhea. In all, she can have a vaginal dryness and have a sexual dysfunction. Any woman who is on a psychotropic medication, especially antipsychotic, mood stabilizers, many cardiovascular agents, histamine receptor blocker, long use of the oral contraceptive, they all lead for the female sexual dysfunctions. So if in short, if I say there's organic causes, there's a psychological causes, there's a relationship causes, and there's a socio-cultural factors which affect the female sexuality. So there are two classifications which I want to focus. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide. So this is a American Foundation Urological. Back jaiye, please. Back slide. Yes. So this in this classification, there were hypoactive sexual desire disorder. There's a sexual aversion order, sexual arousal disorder, orgasmic disorder, and the sexual pain syndrome. In new classification, next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Please stop here. This is the latest one, is a diagnostic and a statistical manual of the mental disorder. There's a female orgasmic disorder, female sexual interest and arousal disorder. They have made one, genitopelvic pain disorder, and there's a fourth one is a substance or medication induced sexual dysfunction. Next slide. Next slide, please. Yes. So this hypoactive sexual desire disorder has been eliminated as a diagnostic category in the DSM-5, although some international society and ICD still follow the old nomenclature, and the diagnosis of the sexual dysfunction due to a general medical condition and sexual aversion disorder are absent from this new DSM-5 classification. In this classification, it combines hypoactive sexual desire disorder and female sexual arousal disorder into single, and sexual desire is the motivation to have sex. Sexual arousal refers to the physiological processes of the arousal, including vaginal lubrication and genital warmth related to the blood flow. Next slide, please. Next slide, Dr. Sonal. Yes. So when we talk about the interest or arousal disorder, there's either lack of the significantly reduced sexual interest or arousal as manifested by at least 3 of the following. Either there's absent or reduced interest in the sexual activity, absent and reduced sexual erotic thoughts or fantasies, no or reduced initiation of the sexual activity, or absent or reduced sexual excitement, pleasure during sexual activity, or absent or reduced sexual interest, arousal in response, whether it is written, verbal, or visual, absent, reduced genital or non-genital sensation during sexual activity, almost all or all more than 75% sexual encounter. Next slide, please. Next slide, Dr. Sonal. Yeah, please stay here. The second thing is the symptoms in the criteria A have persisted for a minimum duration of approximately 6 months. So the 1 or 2 episode does not mean that she is sexually having sexual dysfunction. And symptom in the criteria A cause clinically significant distress in the individual. And next thing is the sexual dysfunction is not better explained by a non-sexual mental disorder or a consequence of the severe relationship distress. Next slide, please. So there's a next slide, Dr. Sonal. So there's a type of the female sexual interest. Either it is back में जाइए please. Back जाइए. Please stop here. I'm very sorry to all of you. I don't know what required, or it is generalized or situational. Other thing is we divide it is according to the severity, mild, moderate, and severe. Next slide, please. So it is important to determine whether the patient problem with desire or arousal is dysfunction or a normal variation of the sexual response. The following examples are not considered sexual dysfunction if a patient reports little or no spontaneous desire, but continues to experience responsive desire. A patient maintains a spontaneous or responsive desire, but reports a desire discrepancy between herself and her partner. Or she has a reduced physiological sexual arousal related to the menopausal transition. Next slide, please.
और करता नहीं है, आज नहीं करनी है सही.
So this criteria for female orgasmic disorder include marked delay in orgasm, infrequency or absence of the orgasm, or less intense orgasm for at least 6 months in 75% to 100% of the sexual interaction. When we talk about the female orgasmic disorder, the second type of disorder in the female sexual dysfunction. Next slide. Next, if distress exists, the assessment follows the psychosocial model with the addition of several key questions. In this change is a previous orgasmic functioning, or this difficulty occurred during self-stimulation, partner sexual activity, or both. Does this difficulty occur across different sexual activities and with different sex partners? So, or it is a lifelong or acquired. That is very important to know when we talk about the female orgasmic disorder. Next slide. So establishing the orgasmic disorder, it is important because many women may not know whether they have an experienced orgasm. The education of the women for the sex is a very, very little. They are frustrated with their sex, but they don't know why it is happening. And the next step is determining whether these problems are causing distress. About 1/2 of the women who do not consistently reach orgasm during sexual activity do not report distress. Next slide. Lifelong anorgasmia may suggest the patient is unfamiliar or uncomfortable with self-stimulation or sexual communication with her partner, or lacks adequate sex education. Delayed or less intense orgasm may be related to decreased genital blood flow and dull genital sensation occurring naturally with aging. Next slide, please. So, to determine whether orgasmic difficulties occur only with certain types of stimulation, situation, or partners. This is very, very important. If the patient reports difficulty during partnered sexual activity but not with self-stimulation, it may be the result of inadequate sexual stimulation. Biological factors requiring assessment and the treatment include medical conditions and the use of medication that impact sexual functioning. So the question, next slide, to facilitate, next slide please. The question to facilitate, Dr. Sonal, yes, please stay here. Question to facilitate the assessment of the female sexual functioning. You have to ask the direct question, are you actually active? For the orgasm disorder, are you experiencing any genital pain? And continue to the next question. Do you have any sexual health concern? If she says yes, continue to the next question. Is specifically any distress related to the level of the sexual desire or interest? Assess for the sexual interest or arousal disorder, or ability to become or stay sexually aroused. Again, you have to assess for the sexual interest or arousal disorder. If ability or experience there is a desire and intensity of the orgasm, if it is no, then assess for the orgasmic disorder. If she is experiencing any genital pain, if she says yes, assess for the genitopelvic pain or penetration disorder. Or if she is in the perimenopause era, think of the genitourinary syndrome of the menopause or pelvic floor muscle function dysfunction, especially if she is complaining of the chronic pelvic pain also along with this. Vaginal dryness or burning, again, she is either because of any reason or hyperestrogenic, or she is having a GSM or GSM. Or if pain with the sexual activity, with the insertion or deeper pain, the assess for the genitourinary syndrome of the menopause, pelvic floor muscle dysfunction, or there might be some other reason like adenomyosis or something like that. So coming to next slide, please. Genitopelvic pain or penetration disorder. In DSM-5, vaginismus and dyspareunia are combined in genitopelvic pain disorder. This disorder of sexual pain is defined as fear or anxiety, marked tightening or tensing of the abdominal and pelvic muscles, or actual pain with vaginal penetration that is persistent or recurrent for at least 6 months. These patients frequently come to us gynecologists in our OPD. So it is very important for us to understand these disorders. This may be lifelong or acquired after a period of no dysfunction. So clinicians should determine if the pain occurs with initial vaginal penetration or deeper penetration or both, because it gives a clue what is the actual problem with the woman. Next slide, please. So what is causing patient the sexual pain? Superficial, there might be atrophy, any infections, or there's a vestibulodynia, trauma, or provoked vestibulodynia, or vulvovaginitis, or vaginismus. In the deep, we can find the adenomyosis, endometriosis, there is a pelvic floor dysfunction, or she might be having other reason of the chronic pelvic pain like interstitial cystitis, irritable bowel syndrome, or if she has in some operation, might be she is having a pelvic adhesive disease. And one thing is very, very important to understand, even in a patient of the chronic pelvic pain, is a pelvic congestion syndrome. Many a time, this women are going to one doctor to another, but basically she's having a pelvic congestion syndrome and needs a very different type of the treatment. Then we all know about the PID, myomas, uterine retroversion, or sexual abuse history you can elicit in these women. Next slide, please. So last is a substance or a medication-induced sexual dysfunction. Here, it was under other dysfunction and is defined as a clinically significant disturbance in sexual function that is predominant in the clinical picture. So this criteria for the substance and medication-induced sexual dysfunction are unchanged Neither it is 6-month requirement or the 75% time. What is very important when you go for an evaluation in the sexual history, your history plays a very big role, very big role. You need to have a very detailed history in this patient, as Dr. Jindal has also said in her lecture, that detailed history is required for the correct assessment of the sexual complaint. So it gives you a clue. You have to listen from the patient. Let her speak continuously. And discerning the time frame of the complaint is very essential, whether it is a lifelong problem or is it acquired. Is it present in all situations or in selected relationships? Am I not audible? Due to a certain event to the onset of the complaint. Next slide, please. So what we are going to review: a detailed gynecological history, menstrual history, obstetrical history, medication history. Even you have to take the history of the OTC medicines also, prior surgeries, versus ongoing chronic medical illness, including their timeline and the treatments. And then you come to the psychosocial, marital, and the psychiatric histories. So your one day with these patients has to be devoted to the history. You cannot jump directly to diagnose that she's suffering. Yes, she's suffering from the vaginismus. So coming to the next point, past medical histories are also important. Current health status and the evaluation of the neurologic and the endocrinologic symptoms. Then a big factor is the life stresses, including financial pressures, employment, social responsibilities, identification crisis. That is also a very big thing. What is identification? Is a sexuality. As Dr. Jindal also said about a patient, that she's not a female in the body. I do a gender assignment surgeries. So I have patients who practically say, madam, we are not homosexuals. We are a straight people. We are the men who are trapped in a female body. So this is very important to know whether they don't know their sexual identity. Next slide, please. An attempt should be made to assess symptoms, especially if sexual pain or vaginal dryness is occurring. This symptom can be complex and often involve both, especially if patient has urinary problems or vaginal complaints. So might be she's suffering from GSM or interstitial cystitis or UTI. Because of that, she's not able to have a sex and having these problems. Next slide. Psychological symptoms should be, next slide. Back में जाइए. Yes. So psychological symptoms should be assessed related to the sexual intimacy or desire, stress, anxiety, or depression. To complete the detailed and comprehensive evaluation, question regarding domestic abuse and substance abuse or any type of abuse must also be addressed. Next slide, please. Partner participation is very important when you are eliciting the history. You have to talk that partner also separately and with the patient also. Many a time when you talk to the partner, things changed. Confidentiality, continuity, and the maintenance of a positive as well as a safe therapeutic alliance between the healthcare provider and the patient are critical to successful outcomes, as patient often will display serial disclosure to their healthcare provider on consecutive office visits. The trust, that factor, that confidence, that is very important in all medical practice, but here it is very, very important because this woman is not able to come out. She's confused. She herself don't know what she's having. Next slide, please. So a structured, formalized interview. Next slide, please. Structured, formalized interview scales and a checklist can be incorporated into the workup for sexual complaint. Back mein jaiye. Some of the more popular screening and the assessment tools include the FSFI and the brief sexual symptom checklist, This questionnaire can often be mailed to the patient in advance or completed in the waiting room. Next slide. So this is a very important and very popular and the common, next slide please, questionnaire, FSFI, which is created by the doctor. Please go to the back. And this is based on the study published in the 2000. Divergent validity with a scale of the marital satisfaction has been tested. Next slide. So there's a long list of the questions. Next slide, please. Yes. So if you see there's many questions you can get from the net. I will not read each and every question. Next slide, please. So there's almost 19 questions. Yes, please stay here. So what happened? It takes the 6 major parts of the female sexual function: desire, arousal, lubrication, orgasm, satisfaction, and pain. And what it describes: wish to engage in a sexual experience, receptivity towards sexual initiation, levels and the types of the arousal, signs of the attention or excitement, lubrication, presence, quantity of the absence or vaginal lubrication. When you talk about the orgasm, there's the ability to attain orgasm. And on the next side, when you saw these are the questions, that means that question 11, 12, or 13 is directly related to orgasm. The question 14, 15, 16 is directly related to the satisfaction. And we ask the question 17, 18, 19, it is directly related to the pain. Where if she is having a sensation of the discomfort during intercourse. Next slide, please. Here, there's an interpretation. Again, these are the questions. There are a score ranging 1 to 5 or 0 to 5. It was divided, multiplied with a factor, then you get a minimum score or a maximum score, and accordingly you interpret whether that patient is having a sexual dysfunction or not. So, when we talk about this thing, it is always better that we give this chart to the woman so she can give a answer in a cool manner, in a composed manner, and your own time also not involved during the interview. Another thing which is very popular, next slide please. Next slide please. Next slide. Yes, the brief sexual symptom checklist for the woman. Here you have to ask, there's a very short way. Are you satisfied with your sexual function? If no, please continue. How long you are dissatisfied? Then you have asked this question, and would you like to talk about it with your doctor? So it's a very concise short form, and you are able to understand patient will come in this category. Next slide, please. Physical examination. A complete physical examination should be performed in order to assess general health and rule out possible chronic diseases that may affect the sexual response cycle. A thorough genitopelvic examination is paramount, and we all know that specifically in a perimenopausal and menopausal or hyperestrogenic condition, there is a urogenital atrophic changes, and it is a chronic progressive medical condition associated with the tissue and organ deterioration. A primary symptom is dryness. Next slide. When you examine these vaginas of the hyperestrogenic female, what you are going to see, first in all female, there's an external pelvic examination, begins with a visual inspection of the vulva, labia majora, labia minora, which usually we skip when we directly go for a PV examination, and my whole mind is focused in the internal pelvic organ. Rarely we observe these external area, but here it is very, very important. Always gently handle these women, and many times you require a cotton swab test. And this inspection may reveal changes like pubic hair distribution, vulvar skin disorders, lesion, masses, cracks, fissures. It also show you the redness, pain typical of the vestibulitis, flattening and the pallor of the labia, which shows the estrogen deficiencies, or pelvic organ prolapse. Next slide, please. Next slide. So here you have a urogenital atrophy, contributes to the atrophic vaginitis. Careful inspection can demonstrate the pale, thin epithelium, and vagina may be dry. So in patient with a pelvic organ prolapse, there may be an associated or patient perceived loss of vaginal size. Other signs that may help pinpoint diagnosis are lacking or sparse pubic hair, introital stenosis, fusion or obliteration of the labia minora majora. You have to evaluate the vaginal depth. Rectal surfaces can be helpful. Palpation of the vaginal walls can identify points of the deep and superficial muscular or pelvic pain. That is very important thing, which is employed in the specific physical therapy. It is a big thing in these women for trigger point evaluation. Next slide, please. So, not only this, you can have a shrinkage of the clitoral anatomy or introital stenosis if patient is in the late menopausal state or a severe hypoestrogenic condition. Next slide, please. Another thing, considering infection, you have to see the pH or vaginal cytology can be used at a diagnostic purpose. It is prudent to rule out candidiasis, bacterial vaginitis, trichomoniasis in these women who are having these problems, and quick simple office-based wet mount or the whip test we can do. As we all know, it is not important to discuss. Now coming to the next slide, please. Internal pelvic examination. We have to see the manual evaluation of the muscles of the pelvic floor, not the per vaginal examination for the internal organ directly. Spend time with the muscles of the pelvic floor. See whether they are tight, whether you are able to penetrate some knots in it. Then you have proceed to see the uterus, bladder, urethra, anus, nexa, any tenderness, pelvic masses. In pelvic floor muscles, you have to see whether they are a voluntary contraction relaxation or whether they are tender to the palpation. In pelvic organ prolapse, because of the bladder hypermobility, there might be the weakening of the endopelvic fascia and it can lead to the sexual pain. If there's an endometriosis, adenomyosis, there's a size and the flexion of the uterus, tenderness in the vaginal fornices, or fullness, you can evaluate. Next slide, please. And very important to see the neurological examination. Next slide, neurological examination of the pelvis. Here, lumbosacral examination is very much important and includes assessment of the pelvic floor muscles, strength, sphincter resting tone, voluntary anal contraction, and the perineal sensation. Next slide. So it is important to assess pelvic floor muscle strength because sexual function is associated with the normal pelvic floor muscle function. And it is particularly the pubococcygeus and the iliococcygeus were responsible for the involuntary contraction during orgasm. Orgasm has been considered a reflex which is preceded by the increased blood flow to the genital organs, tumescence of the vulva and the vagina, that is numbness, and there's an increased secretions during sexual arousal and increased tension and the contraction to the pelvic floor muscles. Next slide. So in a study, it was found that women with a strong or moderate pelvic floor muscle contraction scored significantly higher on both orgasm and arousal domain of the female sexual function index compared with a woman with a weak PFM contractions. Orgasm and arousal function may be associated with pelvic floor muscles strength and a positive association between pelvic floor strength and the sexual activity and function. Next slide, please. So when we see what type of the function or dysfunction we found, either there's a normal PFM, can be voluntary or involuntary contract. There's an overactive tone which we usually found in cases of the Whiting dysfunctions or dyspareunia. Then there's an underactive tone or low tone where muscles cannot contract, or there's a non-functioning type of the inactive muscles. How to assess? Next slide. Intravaginal or intrarectal distal palpation in a standing and supine position. The examination evaluate tone, squeeze pressure during contraction, symmetry and relaxation. Although it is a very, very subjective thing. There's no validated scale. Contraction can be further divided into voluntary or involuntary. And in examination, physician should ask the patient to contract as much as she can to evaluate the maximum strength and sustained contraction for the endurance. It can be done by digital palpation or by the pressure manometry or dynamometry. We usually refer these patients when we found in the digital palpation to our pelvic physiotherapist. She's quite trained in these things. Next slide. Examination can be focused on the levator ani, piriformis, and the internal obturator muscle, bilateral, and pelvic muscle tenderness, which can be highly prevalent in the woman with the chronic pelvic pain. So here, remember, we tell each woman to do the Kegel exercises. So if we order the Kegel exercises to these women, it is absolutely wrong because their muscles are already tender because of a contracted disorder. So it is very necessary to digitally evaluate the pelvic floor musculature to understand how they are, and their parameters should be evaluated. Next slide. So it was Mr. Lubican et al. Has described a 0 to, next slide please. Yes, be here. To 4 number scale. 1 as a comfortable pressure associated with the examination, 2 as an uncomfortable, 3 is a moderate pain, or 4 indicates severe pain with the exam and inability to perform the contraction maneuver due to pain. Next slide. Although in the most of the cases you don't require the laboratory evaluation, but sometimes yes, a patient having the comorbidity, you need a complete blood count to rule out the anemia, TSH, prolactin, adrenal precursors, sex steroids, cholesterol panel, or LFT. Next slide. You may require a TVS, especially if you're thinking of some mass, endometriosis, some leiomyoma, or other things. Then there are the advanced sexual health assessment, vulvoscopy to see the vulval pathology, vaginal photo, plethysmography. I don't have these things, no personal experience. Biothermometry or periodontiometry for the assessment of the pelvic floor musculature. This is done by my physiotherapist. So basically we need a multidisciplinary approach. As a physician, when the patient comes to us, if we are not very much attuned to these things, with a basic understanding of the sexual dysfunction is important for each gynecologist, then we can take help of our other colleagues. Maybe she's a sexual therapist, maybe she's a pelvic physiotherapist, psychologist, or a fellow gynecologist who is trained in it, urologist. So we have to go in a multidisciplinary approach for these women. Next slide. This slide is from the Medscape, medscape.com. Very wonderful slide. Next slide. Next slide. Yes. So when you go for a treatment, you have to go for the behavior modification, sexual devices, sexual pharmacology, consultations, psychotherapy, pain management, patient and partner education is very, very necessary. Evaluate medication, treat systemic illness, structured sexual toss, and yes, sometimes you need alternative medicines. Next slide. Lifestyle modification is very important. Physical activity, healthy diet, nutrition counseling, and the adequate sleep. You have to, in the psychiatric illness, comorbidities, lifestyle medication play a very, very good. So sometimes these women have a food sensitivities which exacerbate the interstitial cystitis, or they may have allergies, or they may have food with a high oxalate version the vulvodynia. So lifestyle modification, nutrition, and everything has a very important thing. Coming to the topical therapies, we can offer these women lubricants. 3 minutes more.
Dr. Poonam, please mute your mic. Ma'am, please continue.
Yeah, lubricants and moisturizer. There are many types of moisturizers are available. You can get from the Amazon or from the net. And Alprostil is a FDA approved for the males, but it is under investigation trials for the female. Still, it is not in use. Just for the sake of that, I have written here. But many type of lubricants, water-based or oil-based or silicone-based, you can use in the first go.
then the first thing, these patients should go for a manual therapies. They do wonder. This transvaginal technique where the pelvic floor dysfunction by the rotation of the muscles, by the hand, by the tip to trigger point, by the relaxation of the muscles, patient really improved. So biofeedback, again, one thing where patient is taught to relax her muscle or contract her muscle as she required. There's a home devices is also available by the means of the Eros therapy, which is a suction to the clitoris with the vibratory sensation to increase the blood flow to the clitoris, increase sensation, orgasm, lubrication, or satisfaction. In the third group, we can advise, especially in the vaginismus patients or the patient who has a vaginal length is less, for the vaginal dilators to increasing lengths and the girls designed to treat the vaginal and pelvic floor pain. Coming to the pharmacotherapy, there's either hormonal or non-hormonal options are available. Next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Yeah. So the old gold standard is conjugated estrogen as a cream. Or you can give even a systemic estrogen in oral form, transdermal preparation, typical formulation. Even some women, you can, although it is not FDA approved, but they have an improved sexual desire with the Tibolone. Then Osphina or Osfemivine is FDA approved for a postmenopausal woman for the dyspareunia. For the, it is an estrogen agonist in the select tissue and daily dose is a 60 milligram. All the testosterone is found that it can improve the sexual desire or pleasure or orgasm, but it is not FDA approved. And we don't know whether what is the long-term safety or efficacy and how it is going to behave. Next slide. This drug nowadays in last few months is quite in news. The flibanserin, it is a well-tolerated serotonin receptor, 1A agonist and the 2A agonist shown to the improve sexual desire, increase the number of satisfying sexual events and reduce distress associated with the low sexual desire when compared with the placebo. So FDA has approved this drug as the first treatment targeted to women with the hypoactive sexual desire disorder. It can, however, severe hypertension, syncope, and is not well tolerated with alcohol. So always remember this word, because today many women, they consume the alcohol also, and along with the fluconazole, erythromycin, these drugs are very common in our practice of the vulvovaginitis. Here we cannot advise this drug. Coming to the next drug, next slide please. Bupropion is a mild dopamine and norepinephrine reuptake inhibitor. Although it is FDA approved for the major depressive disorder, but is still not approved for the female sexual dysfunction under investigation. Next drug is tricyclic antidepressant, nortriptyline and amitriptyline. Always start with the 10 milligram dose. With the divided doses, you can increase gradually. But it is there for the neuropathic pain, but again, it is not FDA approved for the FSD. Next group is the non-hormonal pharmacotherapy. You can use muscle relaxant in the oral or topical compound. Next slide. From are the used to treat increased pelvic floor tension and spasticity. Next slide. Other medication include benzodiazepines such as oral clonazepam, intravaginal diazepam. Although again they are not FDA approved. Another paper shows that 26 patients who received vaginal diazepam for bladder pain, sexual pain, and the elevated hypertonus, they found that the subjective and the sexual pain improvement assessed on the FSFI and the visual analog pain scale significantly improved during resting, squeezing, and the relaxation phase. Multimodal therapy can be used for the muscle spasticity and the high tone pelvic floor dysfunction. Next slide. Now coming to the trigger point and the Botox injection. Today, Botox is given for many things, from the beauty to the many urinary disorders, even in the cases of vaginismus or in the pelvic floor muscles. It is given for the high tone pelvic floor dysfunction, and it was found in studies it is very effective. But again, before giving Botox, please have a proper training, because if you introduce in a wrong place, it can paralyze the anal sphincter and the urinary sphincter too. Next slide. Psychological issues you have to address by the sex therapy. Next slide, please. And it is a traditional approach. Conjunctive behavioral sex therapy is very, very important. And a new thing which is being discussed a lot is a mindfulness-based conjunctive behavioral therapy in everything, not only in this sexual dysfunction. Next slide. Even in our adolescent conference, we have this mindfulness program for the adolescents. So it is an ancient Eastern practice with a Buddhist root, and this therapy is a non-judgmental present moment awareness comprised of the self-regulation of attention and accepting orientation to the present. Although there is a little evidence from the prospective ADHD, it may benefit women with sexual dysfunction after intervention with sex therapy and cognitive behavioral therapy. Next slide. So just to summarize treatment at a glance, you have bupropion in higher doses has been shown to be effective for antidepressant-induced sexual dysfunction. Sildenafil may benefit women with sexual dysfunction induced by selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. Female genital sexual pain disorders are complex, most effectively managed by comprehensive multidisciplinary approach. Group cognitive behavioral therapy has been shown to effectively treat low sexual desire, and mindfulness-based intervention have been shown to effective treatment. Next slide. Direct masturbation is recommended for lifelong anorgasmia. Local vaginal estrogen therapy is recommended and preferred over systemic therapy. In the GSM, unrelated dyspareunia when vaginal dryness is the primary concern. Osphina is modestly effective for dyspareunia, and transdermal testosterone with or without concomitant estrogen therapy has been shown to be effective for the short-term treatment. Next slide. To conclude, it is a common and affect women of all ages, can negatively impact a woman's quality of life and overall well-being. Etiology is complex. Treatments are based on the cause of the dysfunction. Difficult case warrant referral to a specialist. Future prospective trial, RCTs, use of validated questionnaires, meta-analysis will continue to move us forward as we find better ways to understand. But what I tell to we as a gynecologist not have even a basic knowledge about it. First, we have to learn that basic knowledge. Future will come automatically. I thank the resources from where I have taken to make this talk. Thank you so much. And others also for the small points. And thank you so much, the organizers, supports, and delegates, and everyone who are here, and especially Neeraj, who is doing a wonderful job, Sharda ma'am, who is here to inspire us, to my chairpersons, and my darling Jyoti. Thank you very much. And I'm really apologize to all of you for all glitches because of this technical I have done. Thank you so much. Next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide.
So, Dr. Ragini Agarwal and Dr. Sunil Jindal, presentation par excellence. A well-deserved applause. So, good evening, dear friends and my respected seniors. We are at the helm